This is episode 487. And today we're going to be talking about resilience and mental strength. If you've been listening to this for a little bit of time, you know that for the past several weeks we've been going over the 4 C's of mental strength. And resilience is one of the, you could call, byproducts of developing mental strength. Although they seem to be very similar, they are different. And today we're just going to go over resilience. So resilience, what is resilience? Well, it's the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress, such as maybe layoffs, family relationships, maybe even quarantining, or serious health problems or workplace. So basically, any adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats could be a source of stress for us. And resilience is the process of adapting, not just adapting, but adapting well in the face of those, we'll call them adversities or challenges. And it also means bouncing back from a difficult experience. So again, this current situation we're in could be classified as a difficult experience. So how are you going to bounce back? Relationships is a perfect experience when you get your heart broken, and how do you bounce back? Are you resilient? When you get laid off or lose your job, how do you bounce back? All of these things resilience is about, is bouncing back from difficult experiences. So what are the key aspects of resilience training? So there is resilience, and then there's resilience training, just like there's mental strength and mental strength training. So what are some of the key aspects you want to look for if you participate in some resilience training or even want to develop your own? Well, the first is develop an optimistic outlook for the future. That is probably one of the toughest things we all do. I have noticed with a lot of clients and just a lot of people in general, we spend probably a great deal of our time talking about the past. And most of it is about the past that is not so pleasant. And when we talk about the past in a negative way, it's almost impossible to look forward in a positive way. So part of resilience is developing an optimistic outlook for the future, right? So that's part of bouncing back. You bounce back because you see something positive happening in your future. And it's also about developing solid goals as well as a desire to accomplish them. That may sound very familiar from one of the 4 C's in mental strength, but goals. So you look at mental strength, resilience. All of these have solid goals. When they say solid, it means it's specific, it's measurable, it's motivational, it's personal to you. So all these things are important, and the desire to accomplish them. We could have a goal. We could sit down and have a goal. Let's just say we'll use health. And you want to, although I don't like this term, lose 20 pounds. I would like to use the word release. But it is told to you by your significant other or your doctor that you need to do it. And you don't really have a desire to do it, but you're doing it because of them. So you develop a solid goal on how well you do it, but it's not really your desire, it's somebody else's. So resilience is developing solid goal as well as the desire to accomplish them. Also, it's about developing compassion and empathy. That may take you by surprise, because we think about resilience and mental strength as being tough and hardened and, man, this is what we're going to do. But part of resilience is also having our compassion and empathy towards ourselves and towards others, which allow us to understand where somebody is coming from, or understand where we are coming from, and then be able to move on beyond that. And also, part of the aspects of resilience training is developing our focus on what we can control rather than what we can't. Oh my gosh, this is huge. This is huge for my clients. When we start thinking about what the boss said, what our significant others is doing, the weather, the government, the health issues, so many things, that we just don't have any control of it. And this is part of the 4 C's, right? The control part of mental strength is, do you have a sense of control over your life, and do you have a sense of control over your emotions, or do you actually have control over your emotions? So we need to be able to focus on what we can control rather than what we can't. And what we can't control is whatever happened in the past. And if we continue to talk about the past, we are not going to have an optimistic outlook for the future, but also we cannot control the past. What we can control, and actually really what it comes down to, the only thing we really, really can control is our thoughts and our thoughts about a situation. Because our thoughts lead to feelings, lead to actions, lead to results. But we can control making ourselves a sandwich as opposed to having somebody else do it, but it starts with a thought. So I would just say here, the one thing that I would focus on is your thoughts, because you can control your thoughts. Now, what does exactly resilience, so those were the aspects of it, but we want to talk about what does resilience training actually involve? Well, it understands that working on your internal locus of control, your emotions. What can you control internally? Your internal motivation, your internal aspirations. Well, I would say inspirations. Motivation is external, inspiration is internal. So understanding and working with that part of yourself. Developing emotional regulation and awareness. That's basically emotional intelligence. And there's many, many books about it, but the development of that is understanding the feeling that you are feeling, where it's coming from, and perhaps even understanding why you're being triggered. Now, I've mentioned this in a previous podcast. We have a very robust language, the English language, but most of us minimize it to just a few words when we're describing our emotions or describing anything in general, but we'll just talk about emotions. We have anger, sadness, fear, guilt, hate, rage. And there's several wheels out there that talk about the different degrees of emotions. And if you haven't seen it yet, you can just go emotion wheel on Google and look for it. But why that is important is because we want to be able to regulate our emotion, but we have to be able to identify it first before we can regulate it. And if you regulate everything as angry, I would tend to say that that's probably not the case, but that's the only word that you know that right now associates with your feelings. So I would look up this emotion wheel and start to study these emotions, because the words we use don't necessarily always describe, they create. And if we say we're angry, or I'm feeling angry, you're going to feel that emotion, but it may not be angry. It may be just annoyed, which is a degree less than that. So in developing your emotional regulation and awareness, my challenge for you is to develop a broader range of words that describe the emotions that you're feeling. Develop our self-efficacy, meaning, can I do it? Do I believe in myself? And this stems from part of a self-image and some other things I've talked to. But resilience means that, your self-efficacy, yes, I can do it. No matter what happens, I will survive. And that gets back to part of the things in mental strength, right? But developing your self-efficacy is important. And all of these things involve training or coaching. This stuff, it's just next to impossible to do ourselves. We can read a book on resilience. We can read a book on mental strength or mental toughness. We can do a little bit of the exercises. But what I have found with clients is that we do one exercise once and we think it's going to change us, and then we're back to where we were because we haven't built up the habit. This is where coaching is so effective and so helpful, is that a coach, whether it's me or somebody else, is going to hold you accountable session after session after session after session to develop your self-efficacy, to develop your emotional regulation, to help with all that. So there are some training programs out there for resilience, and we'll talk about that here in a few seconds. But if you're going to do this on your own, you must hire somebody or have somebody in your life that's going to hold you accountable for the development of your resilience. And The other part of resilience is learning to tolerate ambiguity, right? It's not so, what does it mean? I'm not too sure what it means. We often get very frustrated if we don't know the meaning of something, if somebody isn't very specific with us. And resilience, the development of resilience can come from that toleration of ambiguity. And then developing a realistic optimism. And we talked about, looking forward with an optimistic perspective. Yes, optimism. Optimism is just not thinking negatives, and it's just not thinking positive. It's, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know it's going to be good, and I know I will survive. I know that no matter what happens, I'll be okay. Those are optimistic. We don't have to look at something that's horrible in our life and try to make it into something beautiful, but we can see how that could lead to something more optimistic. So a lot of people think that having an optimistic attitude or perspective is putting on rose-colored glasses all the time and not seeing some of the maybe not so favorable things that are happening in their life. What it means is you take in the circumstances, and the first thing is no matter what happens, I'll be okay. But then you can develop in NLP we talk about there's no failure, only feedback, and in every feedback there is a learning. That is an optimistic attitude. It's regardless of what's happening in your life, there's learnings there for you to move forward. So is mental strength training the same as resilience training? I get that question quite often, and not quite, because mental strength and resilience themselves aren't technically identical. You can see from what I've reviewed so far that there are very similarities, but they are definitely distinct. Mental strength can be thought of more as an akin to mental hardness or mental growth, and it's actually a personality trait. Mental toughness and resilience are often refer to each other. And I use mental strength, and I think I've talked about why I use mental strength as opposed to mental toughness. But they're almost like, if you're resilient, you have mental strength. It equals. And it's not quite an equal sign. It's more that mental strength develops resilience. And so resilience, on the other hand, is more commonly considered a process, right? You're moving through something based on your personality of mental strength. So resilience has been defined very similarly, but different researchers have come up with, it includes resilience is as good adapting to risk exposure. So you can adapt yourself to whatever risk you're being exposed to. Resilience as a developmental progression to encompass new strengths. So you're resilient, you push through things, and you get stronger. And we can use the physical aspect of this very well. Resilience as the possession of social assets, such as close relationships with others. We can have fights, and we can make up for them. We can go back and forth. We can develop our social intelligence with resilience. So all this is different, but again, mental strength will lead to a byproduct of resilience, and resilience has those things we just went over. So mental resilience training. The U.S. Army, and if you ever read any of the positive psychology books, the U.S. Army had some really great modules that cover three main components, and they look at mental resilience training. So the government, maybe that might be the best word because we're not too fond of the government, or some of us aren't these days. Anyway, I digress. Soldiers go through this mental resilience training. And the first part is preparation. And you can think about this for yourself. This covers the psychoeducation nature of resilience. What is it? How does it go? The mental factors behind it, how to grow them. And these mental factors include self-awareness, self-regulation, mental agility, optimism, connections, and character strength. So this is the first part of mental resilience training. So if you were going to develop your own, you can look up U.S. Army or military mental resilience training. There's plenty of articles on there, but these are the steps I want to go with you in case you want to do it yourself. If not, look and work with a coach to develop your mental resilience training. So that's number one, is preparation. Number two is sustainment, and that's the focus of sustainment component, is to reinforce and apply resilience skilled covered in the preparation aspect of the course. So it may be just a deeper dive into those aspects so that you become ingrained. It gets into your DNA. And soldiers learn to recognize and anticipate what being deployed can involve psychologically, as well as to remain resilient and nurture resilience in peers. And of course, I'm just using this as an example, but we need to be able to take those and apply it to our own life, where we can, maybe the anticipation of being deployed, maybe the anticipation of going to work, the anticipation of starting a business, the anticipation of starting a new relationship, and what that means to you psychologically, and how you can develop your mental resilience around that. And the third part is enhancement, based heavily on sports psychology and principles. The enhancement component covers one module of that resilience training. And here it basically teaches goal setting, confidence building, energy management, and more. And if you heard me talking about mental strength, there's goal setting, self-talk, energy management, and which builds the confidence. So again, resilience and mental strength go hand in hand. And the benefits of mental strength is you're coping with stress in a positive way. It's associated with longevity. The more resilient you are, the longer you're going to live, the lower rates of depression, the greatest satisfaction you are going to have with life. And it also gives you a sense of control, and it helps you feel more positive in general. And there's also, what also means that a lack of resistance, or not a lack of resistance, a lack of resilience means that you may not be able to handle stress so well in difficult situations, and we know where that can deteriorate to. But chronic stress is associated with harmful health conditions such as high blood pressure, a weakened immune system, anxiety, depression, insomnia, heartburn, indigestion, heart disease, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think you get the picture. The more resilient we are, the more healthy we are, the more healthy we are, the more we can enjoy life. The more we can enjoy life, the happier we are going to be. So at the core of this is mental strength. Mental strength builds on resilience. And when you get to become a resilient person, these are some of the things that will happen to you. So in summary, resilient people are able to utilize their skills and strengths to cope and recover from problems and challenges. Doesn't that sound like a wonderful place to be? And again, I would encourage you to, if you want to look into this, contact me, contact some coaches, look at resilience training online, but do the work and stick with it. So next time we're going to talk about, hey, it's going to be a surprise. I haven't determined what we're going to talk about next time, but it will be fun. If you want to see these show notes or find out more about me and my coaching, please visit warriormindcoach.com. Use the pull-down menu and go to the blog. You'll see where these show notes are. And please follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest under the handle